difference between local versus remote. If people don't know what we're talking about, like, what will be the short version of that?
I can give the elevator pitch, and Christian, you can do a much better job at this than I can. So think of it as a local cluster is the cluster, because remember, Argo CD requires you to run on Kubernetes. So it doesn't require, but you need to run on Kubernetes and connect to Kubernetes. That is your local cluster. That is the one that is currently maintaining. A remote cluster is any other destination outside the local cluster, whether it be, doesn't matter where it's running. It could be running in the cloud, it could be running on-prem, you name it. Christian, I'll hand it over to you to dig deeper than that.
Yeah, and I'll kind of like just jump into like the next section.
I'll give a trivia question.
Yeah, trivia question as well. Yeah, so it's we say like local and remote clusters. It's essentially kind of just goes into the design of Argo CD, which is like a hub and spoke design, right? So Argo CD is very much of a hub and spoke design, right? And so anything that no, not yet.
Happened?
No, yeah.
You dropped off. Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, okay. Anything that anything that is like not like local cluster in the book, I think I mentioned it, but I'll mention it here as well. Like there's we refer to the local cluster as in cluster, in dash cluster. You'll see a lot of that. Yeah, you'll see a lot of that. That's kind of like a shorthand of kind of like Argoism to to say, hey, in cluster means the cluster that Argo CD is running on. So like here, like it'll reach out in terms of like hub and spoke design. So that's what we mean. Like there's like you can manage Kubernetes clusters, whether it be like the in cluster or hub and spoke design, again, the external clusters.
So I have a question. So if I install vCluster and create a cluster inside my cluster, is that a local cluster or a remote cluster? What postal address does it have?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to do that, but that would be a remote cluster technically, from a technical standpoint. Yeah. Technically speaking.
Yeah. So it's a remote cluster, and you have to create a secret, and that's when the secret to say what HTTP do I need to connect to, but the in cluster, the secret doesn't exist. So if you're looking around for the in cluster secret, it's not there. But it might be there if you're using one of my examples, because I tend to, as best practice, to create the in cluster secret with the name that I wanted to name it. And then also the annotations and labels, so I can use application sets to deploy things. So that's kind of like one of the architecture patterns that I use in my examples. Is always there's always going to be that secret in cluster because of the usage of the application sets. And then the next question is defining it. So what it takes to define a cluster?
Yeah, so all cluster, like when we say cluster, or like cluster information is stored as a secret, right? Whether you add the cluster via like Terraform or the Argo CD CLI or the Argo CD API, at the end it creates a secret, right? And so and there's
or external secret operator, right? I think we mentioned in one of the sessions, right?
Yeah, external secret operator. Yeah, you can probably best practice to store that in the external secret, or like some sort of external secret, right? You don't want that in Git. You always want the reference to a secret. And so so the basic structure is kind of like a name, right? Basically Kubernetes name, whatever you want to call it, foo, bar, whatever, right? The server endpoint, meaning that this is the Kubernetes API endpoint, right? So it's essentially, it again, hub and spoke. It needs to be able to reach out and connect to that API endpoint. So you need to give that address. And then a configuration, right? Configuration is a JSON configuration, which is minimum is, this is like the very minimum viable one, right? Which means the token for the service account for that Kubernetes cluster, and any TLS configuration, right? So like if you're a self-signed certificate, you need to give it the certificate, right? To be able to see. You can set to insecure equals true, right, for testing and stuff like that. But like best practice is this.
Or if you say a domain name that has a valid like TLS, like carlos.com or something like that, then you don't need the CA data, right?
You don't need the CA data. No, you just put insecure equals false, right, and make sure you remove that comma because it's JSON.
And then this is the part that is like sensitive, right? The bearer token. I don't know if So the other thing like is if you install, if you add in a cluster from a like, I can talk about my cloud provider from a cloud provider, managed provider. You would not hard code that secret in here, and what you're going to put in here is like the name. Actually, you don't put a bearer token. You put in here any IAM role, like in a workload identity that you want to assume, and then the CI data, because usually those endpoints are private. There's no .com or something like that, and then at that point, maybe you can put it in Git because it doesn't have sensitive information. It's just metadata to connect to a cloud provider cluster.
I have a question for the audience. We're going to take a poll here. How many folks are you? So first of all, how many folks are managing remote clusters?
You can put +1 in the chat.
+1, raise your hand, take a pick. Or are you just running it locally? All right, so that's number one. Number two, how many of you are using some form of workload identity to communicate to your remote cluster? This is not using bearer token or any static credentials. This is using either a cloud provider or etc.
So who's using kubectl, create SA, and then grab the token and copy paste it, kind of like a practice? Seb is going like this.
Yeah.
Because I've gone back and forth about, I want everything to be as secure as possible. So using workload identity. However, in a lot of my customers, there's no ability to leverage workload identity because they're not running on a cloud provider. They're running on bare metal, they're running locally, etc. However, one of the things I am working on is, how many of you have heard of Spiffy and Spire?
Yeah, I've heard.
So I have some work, and I've proven it out, where you can use Spiffy and Spire to authenticate to remote clusters.
To do machine-to-machine
authentication. Yes.
Yeah.
But also identity that you get with Spire or Spiffy, which are the two?
Well, Spiffy is the protocol, Spire is the implementation.
Okay.
But anyways,
we
almost added it to the book, actually, but like it was just such a POC build that
so that's why so that makes a lot of sense. This is why I saw Andrew like running around in Slacks in different places doing kind of like research on this authentication thing.
I do have it working, and I will share with you a blog post that I am going to be writing soon.
Oh, cool.
I just need to find it, and there it is. Christian, I know, has reviewed it, and we actually had some folks. We had, why am I blanking on his name from Intuit?
Michael?
Yeah, we have Michael also look at it as well.
Okay.
So we'll be looking to post well. And for those of you on the Red Hat side, there's a downstream version I'm working on for the Red Hat side of the house too.
Okay, makes sense. For that workload identity, right? For that Argo CD to have an identity and the remote cluster to have an identity and then trust each other.
Yeah, so the key is that you need to have OIDC-based auth enabled on the remote cluster. And then you just use your identity that comes from Spiffy Spire that you inject into the pod to be then used to authenticate. So
great!
It's really cool.
Just in time tokens, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. And the best part about this is you can run this anywhere. It can be running on-prem, at the edge, anywhere.
And if we do that, can we work together on like changing the default or something in the CLI to avoid people creating that static?
Well, no, we should never do that, because there's never going to be the guarantee you're going to have that ability.
But you have to go over like maybe do the secret signal to do it or something, not do it by default.
The problem is you still want the easy ramp. Otherwise, if you make it too hard, people are not going to adopt the technology.
Okay, fair.
I'm with you though. I definitely agree. We definitely want to use secure methods.
But for remote clusters, you think people like are getting started with remote clusters and not with a local cluster?
Well, no, they always start with local cluster. But the key is when they get to the remote clusters, it's being able to show that there are different options out there. And the documentation is great to tell you all of the options on the buffet.
Yeah.
But sometimes this is the problem we have in America. We have too much choice and we get lost. And sometimes it's great to have what I call the in and out syndrome, where I have 3 choices and it's very easy to pick what I want to eat. versus I go to Cheesecake Factory and I have 2,000 items to choose from.
So maybe, okay. Oh, we can take it offline. Maybe I can think about something about detecting that you're connecting to an EKS cluster and then like saying like, no, you should not do this.
That's a good idea.
Right? I just want people to stop creating static accounts to connect to EKS clusters. So if the CLI can detect, hey, you're connecting to an EKS cluster, you call Carlos or like, do not do this service account. Just trying to get stuff more secure, because the minute that they do it, even for a PLC, suddenly their remote clusters are hacked, and these are banks, right?
Yeah, and like that's kind of like when I mentioned about the secret, the cluster secret, like that's like the bare minimum. Like if you're using like something like an identity manager, like
Elantra or something like that.
Like, or like whatever cloud provider also as well, like these roles or these just-in-time tokens, is like that configuration gets actually a little bit more complex, or not complex, not as complex, it's just you need to add more things to it, right? It grows in size.
Yeah. Well, the last thing on that is just for awareness. If you are using a Kubernetes cluster that you created with admin or something like that, you can add AWS AI roles identity, workload identity, even if it's a cluster that is a kind cluster or something. You can add that workload identity to it. So the in cluster, this is the famous in cluster, which doesn't exist, Christian. Thank you for putting it into the book. So if people are looking for this secret, it doesn't exist. But if you create it, right? It doesn't matter what you call this name. What matters is this server URL.
We can see your book, by the way.
Why stop sharing? My bad.
Yeah, it drops. I don't know why.
Yeah. First Jordan, now Jordan's now no. There we go. Yeah.
So this is the secret. But I was going to say you can create it with whatever name you want, here. But the thing that makes it the in cluster secret is this server URL. So if you try to create multiple secrets with this thing, right, it's problematic and such. So there's other things in there.
Yeah, one thing I do want to call out is that notice that there's like a comment there that says what we're adding. So there's a special field in the secret called the project, right? So you can actually scope clusters to a specific project, right?
Oh, a namespace.
Yeah. So what we're and I don't think we went through project management yet, but you can scope applications.
Applications that belong to a project to a specific cluster.
No, important though, Carlos. This is not a Kubernetes namespace; it's an Argo project.
Yeah, it's an Argo project. Yeah.
Oh no! Yeah. So I was going to say, I believe you can also put Kubernetes namespace in this secret. Is that supported?
You can limit the So when we talk about namespaces, that's when we're talking about the two different deployment styles, whether it be a cluster deployment or a namespace deployment.
Yeah.
But yes, to answer your question, yes, there's another field called namespaces, so you can scope down. So you can essentially, it's like you add a cluster, and I think by default and by testing and
everything
situation, it's fine. Like right, I want to manage this cluster using Argo. Yeah, I have to give it the keys to the castle. But there's certain situations where it's like, well, no, I want to manage this cluster, but only for this specific team. So you have to do project scope, and these specific namespaces are only allowed to deploy into that. So you can mix and match there. So
Nick has a good question. I don't know if Nick wants to ask, or I can read it.
For sure. Does that mean that you can have different secrets for the same cluster in different Argo CD projects?
No. Unfortunately not.
Because this is the unique thing, right? The server is the
unique thing. Yeah.
So the other way of doing it is kind of hacky, is having domain names that point to the same IP address, right? And then you have Kubernetes a different secrets, thing. Yeah. So this string in here is what makes it unique.
Wow,
But
I'm kind of surprised.
But if you want to be, I've been asking for like changing this aspect of it, but I think there's an issue open. But there's people doing it you can find one of the 17,000 people in the Argo CD Slack channel that posted that they're doing DNS shenanigans. So you can name it whatever you want with whatever the names, the string is a domain name, and map is the same IP address, which is a kube API. You just need to manage the CA. The CA data needs to have different domain names that are acceptable, right? That extension that you can have, like carlos.com and christian.com and andrew.com point to the same IP address, and the CI data is the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I imagine their use case is like they want different teams to have different access, different credentials to the same cluster.
Yeah. The another way to solve it is the app project RBAC, right? I think that's where like the project, as a project, we want people to like focus on doing it in the RBAC Argo. But I can see the use case of wanting, right? Like you want to scope it down as much as
it's charging everywhere. Also for scalability to assign different pods. It came to me. It came through SIG scalability, the requirement.
I have a question. So
go ahead.
I haven't had the chance to check the security sections chapters yet, but I was thinking if you guys touch the ESO integrated workflow to start with the first cluster, like probably the air-gapped cluster, maybe even, and do you have any example workflows with ESO integration? Because we have now having more secrets, right? So I was thinking if there is something like that, or
Well, the integration lives outside Argo CD, so it's whatever mechanism that you can find to create those for those secrets to pop up, right? So as you add more clusters, either through cluster API or to Crossplane or to Terraform, it's a matter of like creating that secret in there through ESO, right?
Yeah, so I create the Argo CD cluster. It comes with the default secret, right? So then I have to overwrite that secret as.
Oh no, don't overwrite this one. This one doesn't exist. It's your like remote clusters. You're going to manage 10 remote clusters, then create 10 ESO files, external secrets,
right.
and then 10 secrets show up.
Yeah, I was just thinking if there is a sample workflow of all this.
Oh, I have examples. I can share those. I have one with vCluster.
Right?
Canoe. I have Canoe, and I have a demo from vCluster that you can bootstrap the Argo CD, and then that one bootstraps the other ones, and then it bootstraps ESO, and it comes back. So it's DevOps orchestration. So yeah.
All right. Cool. Thanks.
I was going to say YAML everywhere, but now it's KYAML. And this thing stopped. I don't know why my Windows.
What's really weird about KYAML is like I see JSON in it, and it's like, no, this.
Yeah, I saw this. I had the same impression. Like,
let's get the worst of both worlds.
I don't know why this thing keeps dropping. How we're doing with time. Adding remote clusters. I think this is the discussion Sebi was talking about. Like, how do you add them? Right, creating a secret with whatever. I think this is the kind information just to do the examples from the GitHub repo. But some of the commands are here and then connected through the CLI. And then you have the example of like adding it here. You can do Argo CD cluster, and there's different commands after Argo CD cluster, right? And then this adds the cluster. Where's the cluster add? I thought I missed it. Or there's no. I thought it was Argo CD add. There it is. So this is the thing that I've been like ranting as an old man. Like people do Argo CD cluster add EKS cluster or like manage, and then boom, now it goes to the other cluster, takes your kubeconfig, goes to the remote cluster, your managed cluster, creates a static token, gets back that static token, and then creates a secret with that static token, and like you don't notice what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, this here, and it is important. Exactly what you said, to kind of reiterate what you said. When you're doing an Argo CD cluster add and you provided the kube config, it's not using that kube config to in the secret. It's actually using it to connect to the remote cluster, and then Argo there creates its own. That's what I said. Like it creates its own service account. And creates the cluster role and the cluster role binding, and then creates the secret. So it's very nuanced, right? Like it makes sense when you say it out loud, but like in the beginning, like when someone's working with it, like wait, why is it? Where's the secret, and why is the secret different than the kube config I created?
Yeah, because you would think you will see this file in the cluster secret. You open the cluster secret, and like, wait a minute, where is this hard token coming from?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the
So be aware. Maybe we can do something with the docs, improve that. So yeah, Argo CD clusters. I guess again, like the Argo CD CLI, very useful in terms of like for troubleshooting, for CI pipelines, for scripting. But then declarative is kind of like the way to go with, which is creating that secret, right, with Kubernetes, and it could be directly with kubectl, or it could be indirectly with ESO that you can connect to Vault, Azure Secret Manager, the different providers to create that secret. And then you and by the way, this is a string, right? It's not type, but it's a string in that config that you put all your things in there. And there's a CLI utility for the providers, but this is essentially what you want to get in there, the CI data to that kube API. And insecure false, I think that's a default. You don't have to put it, but that's the default. Deployments. So let's go with app of apps pattern. What is the take these days with app of apps? Is it a good thing, a bad thing, recommended?
I always recommend it. So I mean, like anything else, it depends, but I think I tend to use app of apps. I don't want to say in place of application sets. I mean, they all have their places, right? So I like app of apps. It's a way to bootstrap everything. It's a way, there's a lot of flexibility with app of apps, right? And so my opinion is I like app of apps specifically for bootstrapping, right? I mean, you can do bootstrapping with application sets, but it's still a little wonky. I think Nick said it in a great short way. GitOps for your GitOps, essentially. Especially for bootstrapping, especially for like kind of just getting. I always recommend it. Like especially if you're like managing microservices. You have many tiers of your applications, right? And they're each kind of semi-independent, but they all collectively create a bigger application stack. So it's a great management tool as well.
Yeah, and it starts from the standpoint from like a person starting with Argo CDs and like, how do I deploy my hello world? Well, you have to create an Argo CD application. And then how do I do that? Well, you write a YAML file and then you put it there. So I'm going to create the hello world too. So you create another YAML file and you put it there. And then that's like, well, can I just automate that and then put it in a Helm chart? Or can I have an Argo app that points to a folder that has those YAML files, right? That's where the pattern starts going.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing I've never really bought into. I'm not saying it's bad or good or not valid or anti-pattern or anything, but like having a Helm file, having a Helm the template or whatever creates applications. Like I never bought. I know people do that, like where they create a Helm chart that deploys their applications, but I've never had a need to do that. So I'm trying.
I've done it. I've done it. Once again, it allows you to take advantage of the templating of Helm, but
power of Helm. Yeah. So Christian, what I don't know if I think we talk later about application sets or using Helm. This is this is a topic, application set.
It was the next one.
Very quickly, I have instead of app of apps, the patterns that I do for the GitOps Bridge and the other projects that I have is like an app of application sets. So if I'm going to deploy 15 application sets, the same problem, how do I deploy the seventh one? Well, I put it into a Helm, because that's what a lot of industries and corporate people are using for like the power of templating, right? So that's in here, right? Using this is the definition of using Helm, right, to deploy your Helm chart. But that Helm chart could be an app, or it could be Argo things, right? It could be Argo projects, or it could be an Argo project and a namespace for a multi-tenant project. And then application sets is included here. Wants to take this approach, because I think this goes along a lot with the cluster management, which is the chapter which has the cluster generator. Christian or Andrew, what are application sets? I think at the beginning, talking about cluster management.
Yeah. So in the beginning, we had app of apps, right, which is basically was used essentially just a method to bootstrap it, right?
Application set didn't exist, you mean?
Yeah, application didn't exist, right? It's like, okay, well, I need a way to, bootstrap or like manage or GetOps my GetOps, right? Like I need an application that manages all my applications, right? So I have a single point of entry there. And then people started using Helm, right, to templatize the creation of applications. So application set is kind of a I don't want to say the next phase or involvement. It kind of took the app of apps, kind of idea, and it kind of took the Helm templating kind of idea and kind of mushed it together, right?
That's an interesting take. I never heard that take of explaining it like that.
Yeah, it kind of took like, okay, well, I have and it comes with generators, right? I need to generate my applications, but based on different rule sets, right? Based on different things that I'm doing, right? The list generator, I think, is like the perfect entry point for anyone. This is basically key value pairs, right? I have 5 clusters. Maybe that's a bad example, but I'll go with it anyways.
Environments. It could be environments, right?
Oh yeah, I have 5. I have 5 environments, but I need the same at one application to go to these 5 environments. I don't want to create 5 different application. I just create one application set that and then creates these applications for me, right? So it's kind of the original author, which is Jan from Red Hat.
Oh, really? Good insight.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, the original. He said it was kind of like an application factory, right? Like you give it parameters, it kind of just and then it spits out applications, right? It really is just an application factory.
Should call it, why was not named Application Factory?
Application Factory would be kind of cool, right?
Yes, that would explain a lot, right, to a lot of people.
Yeah, and so there's different generators, right? There's like key value pair, which is like generator. There's cluster generators, meaning deploy this application to these clusters, whatever clusters there is, right?
Oh, but this one is interesting, right? You can say to these clusters that have these labels.
This specific label.
Like that's I use that a lot.
Or every cluster except the ones like
that doesn't have
right? Like
this value or like all these selector expressions of Kubernetes of selecting objects.
Yeah. And then Git generator, right? Which I like, which basically kind of like you say, look in this directory and or these sets of directories. You can give it a list of directories and just deploy everything.
File paths also.
File paths as well. Yeah. Matrix is kind of cool. I use that a lot where you want to use 2 generators. Right, you're using 2 generators, and you want to use kind of like a matrix of like, give you a key value pair.
So for dev, right? So cluster, for the environment dev, I need to deploy to 3 clusters. For prod, to 3 clusters, right? The application.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like you can like start like doing that. I've never used the merge generator too
I
much.
use it a lot. That one I use it for overriding defaults. So if you're going to override like this Helm chart version 1.7, but in this environment is a different version or a different value. You can start like doing overrides of like with the merge. So you're merging. I do it with clusters a lot. The labels of the clusters a lot. And I also mix metrics and merge also a lot. I have examples of using both together, merge and metrics.
Yeah, interesting. So how do app set will look like in Argo CD UI? That's a kind of good question. There is no, since it just generates applications, you would just see the applications as if you created them like manually. There's no like tree view, unless like you're using kind of like what Carlos uses. Carlos uses
an app to generate the app to generate the application sets.
But if you're just deploying application sets, there's no indication in the UI that it's a part.
I think that they were going to. I think that we were going to do an update to support application sets in the UI.
Yeah. There's a plugin.
Or it's a plugin.
Yeah, there's a plugin that does it where if you look at an application, it'll tell you what application set it originated from. Like it's just basically a label. But yeah, no, that was a big request.
This one is interesting, right? The SCM provider generator. This one I have used it for like I point the application set to a GitHub organization. And then when somebody creates, like, for example, from Backstage or an IP, you create a new repo for a new project, Argo is watching for new repos being created with certain labels. And then it will start like installing stuff according to that new GitHub project being created.
Yep.
So
Yep.
at least that's the only use case that I know. There might be other use cases.
PR generator is really cool because
this one you can explain more. I think you have more experience with this one, right?
Yeah. So what you want, so pull request generator is cool because like, so in GitOps, like if you're gonna make a change to an application, there's really no there's no clean way to see a preview of that. So without creating another application manually, right? So the pull request generator kind of monitors your Git repo for a pull request to, you know, whatever Git repo you tell it to, and you can like filter it down like from labels, like if like someone like labels it like preview, right? Like if we're using GitHub. But basically it's like, okay, well then anytime there's a pull request, I'll deploy an application so that way you can preview it.
Which is a branch, right? It will use the Git branch associated to that.
Yeah, it'll use that branch, right? And it'll use that branch to deploy that. A lot of cool,
But is it so, Christian? The question is like, it would like, because a lot of people may have these questions, like a pull request generator, but you don't want to. You can choose to like deploy the application that has like a config map and maybe 2 deployments, everything to a new namespace, and then when the pull request gets deleted or merged, then we want that namespace to be deleted. But it could also be creating a deployment next to your deployment, but having a different name. What's the most common one?
So the most common one is the namespace, right? So that's the most common one. It'll create a namespace and it'll deploy it there so you can see it. And then there's actually good talks from ArgoCon. If you just go to ArgoCon and look, that Adobe has done a lot of work with vCluster, where basically you do a pull request and they have some automation that deploys a vCluster and deploys that preview into the vCluster. So you can actually, so then you kind of have like this isolated kind of view. You don't want it like, you know, maybe you don't want it on the same cluster, right? Production on a production, like you want it on a different cluster or whatever.
Yeah.
But you can do it like with vCluster, right?
And
so
that use case comes from testing add-ons, right? So if you want to like modify Istio or Cert Manager or Kube Proxy or like some Helm chart that is an add-on installed globally, right? You cannot install it in a separate namespace and then install a second controller that starts watching same CR. So you need like sandboxing, right? At that level.
Yeah, exactly.
This one is interesting, right? This is from Red Hat created this. This is useful. And do you have any thoughts on the cluster decision resource generator? You're familiar with this one?
Yeah, this one really has to do with our advanced cluster management tool and the open cluster management
tool.
Cluster management. Yeah, so basically it allows you to determine which cluster you want to deploy your resources on, because there's tight integration between what the ACM Open Cluster Management project provides and Argo CD.
Yeah, this one is very powerful. I can talk a little bit about it because the other one that you saw about cluster generator is basically you're choosing based on label selector. So that'll be your default policy of like normal one, right? Like level 1. If you want to go to level 2 of like policy base, right? Like some heuristic or form that you want to like decide when an app gets deployed to a cluster or removed from a cluster, then you have more flexibility of like that policy design DSL type of thing. Is that an accurate description, Andrew?
Yeah, to an extent.
Yeah. And then plugin generator, I think Christian has more experience on this one.
Yeah, plugin generator is kind of like a catch-all. So like we were creating in the community, well, I want a generator for this. Well, I want a generator for that. Well, I want a generator. And then at some point it's like, well, like we can't keep all this code in tree, right? Right? Like, okay, like, you know, we had some like the basics one, first class citizens, cool. But then the plugin generator is basically like, okay, well, I wrote some Go code that you know, you basically have to satisfy, you need to be able to provide this payload, right? As long as you satisfy the payload is some, you know, it's basically you're returning JSON. Some JSON, and the schema's there like documented, but basically it's like, well, I want to be able to generate applications anytime someone sneezes, right? Like you could come up with like these weird like this, like the most obscure use case. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, there goes the cluster, right? But basically plugin generator is like, you know what, it's as long as, you know, you deploy your applications, right? Like you have a deployment and you have like some Go binary, and you basically tell Argo CD, hey, anything that comes here, you know, send it to that API endpoint.
Don't get surprised if you go to KubeCon Atlanta and you see a sneeze.
A sneeze generator. Yeah, I know.
But anyway, I have an example that I know people have used. And I have some clients that I cannot talk about like that, what things privately they do, but there's a public one created by Google that basically you install this in your Argo CD and it will connect to your Google account, your cloud provider account, and when you create a cluster over there, then it shows up in here and it will create it. So you don't have to create that secret manually for that representation of that cluster. It's a little bit of like automation around it that you don't have to create the secret. It's just watching the clusters in your account and things like that. And you can write it for your cloud provider or whatever you want. But that's a one that I remember seeing that it was kind of useful for that. And I think it was one for GitHub, but I cannot remember right now on that one. Yeah, I think that's the end of this chapter, right? That it? And then the multi-tenancy may take 5 sessions, but cluster management. I think this is a good session that you went over the book. I think is very useful that you went to explaining the declarative way, the imperative way with the CLI, explain what the secrets is. I think the Argo CD documentation has all the documentation is there. Sometimes it's difficult to find what you're looking for in what order. So the book is actually helping someone learn in the right order. That's my 2 cents. What do you think, Savi?
Yeah, I really thought this chapter is really straightforward with the experience of trying to find documentation, videos, what app of apps are doing, and like applications that are doing. This was the most straightforward explanation so far I've seen on this, and really just tidy and in a nutshell everything explained. We have some questions. Arjun is asking, is there anything that AppSets will solve that app of apps won't? And
yes, many things, but go ahead.
Do you want to touch on this a little bit?
And I answered in the chat, but like the biggest advantage is like AppSets creates applications dynamically. So like app of apps, if you want another app, you have to create the application and then commit it to Git and then run the sync, whatever. AppSets happen dynamically, right? So like with the cluster generator, as soon as I add a cluster, workloads start deploying there automatically. Like I don't have to do anything, right? I just added to the cluster. So I think that's like the biggest advantages, right? Like there's other advantages as well, but I think that's like the biggest one. Like if you want to like, if when you're getting started, it's like, okay, you're like, doing it dynamically or you're doing it manually for your use case.
I would add that it's architecture and flexibility. So I've seen projects, and I think maybe one of my many examples out there where maybe you're bootstrapping or doing tenancy, where the application set generates one app, and then that app is the app of apps, and then it generates the rest. It's kind of encapsulating these things that I want, but each one to have a different app because I want to take advantage of the RBAC of the project. So maybe it's creating an app for this project and an app for this other project, right? Dev versus testing. And then the application set is just taking advantage of like the monitoring Git or monitoring pull request or monitoring clusters or decision making, right? That dynamic aspect of it. And then the rest is just generating apps. I don't know, do you cover... I know this was kind of an intro to application set because it was cluster, but I haven't got that far. Do you cover progressive delivery that hopefully one day we get out of experiment?
So like I go through sync waves, application sets, and progressive syncs. I go over that.
Okay, cool. That's part of application set, but I was going to say that's also another thing that you don't get by generating using kubectl customize or Helm to generate all the apps or just a folder.
I have a question as well. Do you find it should we be careful trying to use app of apps and application sets together? I don't know if there are any ways to do it or like any meaningful reasons to do it, but
What do you mean, like
together, right?
Yeah, they work together. basically the application set is just is generating a Argo app, and then that Argo app is pointing to a folder. So in that folder, you can have whatever you want. You can have another application set. I have done application set for application sets.
But if it's a good practice or a bad practice,
it depends on your architecture, what you're trying to achieve, right? And the type of abstractions that you want to create for your interfaces. So it comes down of like who are going to be the owners that it's going to be changing the YAML files in Git, and how do I translate that back to like good architecture where it gets deployed into the cluster. That's my 2 cents. I think we're out of time. I think super happy to have everyone. Oh, Ricardo Muñiz is here. Like a lot of friendly phrases are here. Satish, and yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. I will not be able because I'll be in a plane. So hopefully Savi can host. But multi-tenancy. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Cheers, everyone. Happy to have you all, and see you later.
See you, folks.
Thanks for the great session.